Imagine you worked hard all year, saved $10,000, and then quietly, without anyone telling you, someone reached into your account and took 500 of it. No alert. No notification. Just gone. That is not a hypothetical. That is inflation. And if you think it only matters when gas prices spike or groceries get expensive, you are missing how deep this goes, and how much it is already costing you. Let's talk about what is actually happening to your money right now, and more importantly, exactly what you can do about it this week. Here is the thing most people do not fully absorb until it is too late. Inflation is not just a number that economists argue about on cable news. It is a permanent, ongoing erosion of your purchasing power. And in the last few years, Americans have lived through some of the most aggressive inflation this country has seen in 4 decades. At its peak, the annual rate hit over 9%. Think about what that means. Every single dollar you had sitting in a traditional savings account earning 0.01% interest was losing nearly 9 cents of real value every single year. You felt poorer because you were poorer. Not because your balance went down, but because what that balance could actually buy shrank right in front of you. And here is why this matters so personally for you if you are in your 20s, 30s, or early 40s right now. This is the exact decade where the financial habits you build either compound in your favor or compound against you. The money you save in your 30s, invested wisely, can genuinely change what your life looks like at 60. But the money you leave sitting idle, unprotected against inflation, quietly loses ground every single year. The gap between people who understand this and people who do not is not just philosophical. It shows up in retirement accounts. It shows up in home equity. It shows up in real financial freedom decades from now. So let us get into the actual playbook. For moves that inflation-aware people make that most people simply never learn. The first is understanding the difference between nominal returns and real returns. This sounds technical, but it is one of the most important mental shifts you can make. Your savings account might say you earned 2% last year. Congratulations, right? Not exactly. If inflation ran at 3.5% during that same period, your real return was actually negative 1.5%. You lost ground. The bank showed you a positive number and your wealth still shrank. This is what makes inflation so psychologically tricky. The numbers in your account go up, but the math is working against you underneath the surface. A real-world example. Sarah is 29, responsible, hardworking. She keeps $20,000 in a high-yield savings account earning about 2% annually. Over 5 years, her account grows to roughly $22,000. She feels good about that. But if inflation averaged even 3% during those 5 years, the purchasing power of that money in today's terms is actually lower than when she started. She saved diligently and still fell behind. This is the trap that catches millions of Americans who are doing everything they were told to do. The fix is not to stop saving. It is to make sure more of your money is working in assets that historically outpace inflation, not just accounts that technically pay interest. The second move is understanding what has actually beaten inflation over time. The historical data here is not subtle. The U.S. stock market, measured by broad index funds tracking the S&P 500, has returned an average of roughly 10% annually over the last century before inflation and around 7% after adjusting for inflation. Real estate has also historically been a strong inflation hedge, partly because property values tend to rise alongside inflation and partly because if you have a fixed-rate mortgage, your payment stays the same even as rents and values climb. Treasury. Inflation-protected securities, known as TIPS, are government bonds specifically designed to adjust with inflation, making them one of the most direct hedges available to everyday investors. Here is how this played out for 2 different people during the inflation surge of 2021 and 2022. Marcus had $50,000. Half of it sat in a checking account. The other half was in a diversified index fund. During that period of high inflation, his checking account balance barely moved while inflation ate into its value. His index fund dropped during the market volatility of 2022, which was painful. But over the full 2-year window, it recovered and then some. The person holding only cash. They absorbed the full weight of inflation with nothing to show for it. Markets are volatile. But sitting entirely in cash during inflationary periods is its own form of guaranteed loss. The third move is the one people resist the most, and it is the most important one to hear. You have to spend less than you earn and invest the difference consistently, even when inflation makes that feel impossible. This sounds obvious until you actually sit with it during a period when your grocery bill is up 20% and your rent just renewed at a higher rate and your utilities crept up without you noticing. Inflation does not just erode your savings. It squeezes your ability to save in the first place. This is exactly when most people give up on investing. And it is exactly when continuing matters most. Think about Elena. She is 34, has a decent job, 2 kids, a lot of competing financial pressures. When inflation peaked, she made a decision that felt almost counterintuitive. Instead of pausing her retirement contributions, she looked hard at her discretionary spending and found $300 a month she could redirect. Subscription services she had forgotten about. Meals out that had quietly become a habit. A gym membership she was not using. She kept her contributions in place and even increased them slightly to compensate for the inflation drag. $300 a month invested over 20 years at a 7% average annual return is close to $150,000. That number is the difference between retiring on your terms and working an extra 5 years. The fourth move is something most people in their 20s and 30s never think about, and that is building income streams that grow with inflation. A salary that does not keep pace with inflation is effectively a pay cut every year. This means being aggressive about negotiating raises, developing skills that command higher market value, and for many people, starting to build supplemental income. Dividends from stocks, rental income, freelance work, a side business. These are not luxuries. In an inflationary environment, a second income stream is a financial defense mechanism. Consider what happened to people with real estate holdings during the high inflation of 2021 and 2022. While renters saw their costs climb sharply, landlords with fixed mortgages watched their costs stay flat while their rental income rose. Their asset appreciated in value. Their cash flow improved. Their mortgage effectively became cheaper in real terms over time. Owning productive assets is not just about growing wealth. It is about protecting what you already have from a force that never stops working against you. Here is what you need to do this week. Not next month. Not when things settle down. This week. First, open your bank accounts right now and look at what your savings are actually earning. If it is below 4%, you need to move those funds into a high-yield savings account. Many online banks are offering competitive rates. This is a 30-minute task and it can make a meaningful difference immediately. Second, log into your investment accounts, or open one if you do not have one, and make sure you are invested in broadly diversified, low-cost index funds. If you are not contributing to an employer-matched retirement plan, start there first. That match is an instant return that inflation cannot touch. Third, audit your budget for 3 expenses you can cut or reduce and redirect that money into your investment account automatically every month. Automation is the secret weapon. When the money moves before you see it, you never miss it. Fourth, start researching one additional income stream that fits your skills and schedule. This does not have to be dramatic. 1 client, 1 freelance project, 1 dividend-paying stock added to your portfolio. The goal is to begin. Inflation is not going away. The Federal Reserve may adjust rates. Cycles will shift. But inflation is a permanent feature of modern economies. The people who thrive are not the ones who wait for it to stop. They are the ones who build financial systems strong enough to outrun it. You now have the playbook. The question is whether you use it. Subscribe